created us, who redeems us, and who sets us free. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. So I imagine you're feeling it too, how absolutely wonderful it is for us to be out here in this breeze on the first Sunday of the summer and seeing the green of the grass, that exquisite green, and the blue of the sky, and seeing the school buses. This is real life. I mean, we haven't separated ourselves from the world for this worship. I mean, you never do, being in a school. But right here in the middle of all of it, of all of the daily stuff, and it's really a wonder and a blessing. And it says so much about you that you're able to do this so easily, or at least it looked easy to me. One of the phrases from that long gospel reading, that wonderful reading of what Jesus says to his disciples before he sends them out, one of the things that really pops out at me is the phrase, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. So don't be afraid. You're worth far, far more than many sparrows." Well, I wonder how you hear those words. Of course, there's that old gospel tune that we're going to sing later today. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he's watching me. Beautiful words that give hope to so many people. Hope and comfort and encouragement. And then there's a different interpretation of these words that we hear from time to time. It comes up in Mark Twain's novel, The Mysterious Stranger. There's an argument going on between Satan and a poor woman named Ursula. Ursula has just found a kitten and decides to care for that kitten. And Satan goes to her and says, "I understand you are very poor. Why do you want to add another mouth to feed? Why don't you give it to some rich person?" Ursula bridled at this and said, "Perhaps you would like to have it. You must be rich with all your fine clothes and quality airs." And then she sniffed and said, "Give it to the rich." The idea! The rich don't care for anybody but themselves. It's only the poor who are feeding the poor. It's only the poor that help them. The poor and God. And God will provide for this kitten. "What makes you think so?" asked Satan. Ursula's eyes snapped with anger. "Because I know it," she said. "Not a sparrow falls to the ground without God seeing it. But it falls just the same. What good is seeing it fall?" How like the devil to take words of comfort and hope and encouragement and smash them together with despair, with fatalism. How like the devil to take the words of Jesus and smash them together with a strong dose of reality. Because it is true, although God sees and knows, the sparrow still falls. These were the sparrows that were offered by the poor as part of the temple worship. Everyone was expected to offer sacrifices to God, literal animal sacrifices. The best sacrifices were of sheep, sorry Granny, of sheep and of goats. But the poor couldn't afford those. The poor could only afford sparrows, 2 for a penny. If you bought 4, they throw in 1 extra. So it would be 5 for 2 pennies. That's all the poor could afford. And the poor so often were like those sparrows, considered to be cheap, considered to be expendable. I think Jesus, when he said these words, meant both things. He meant hope and encouragement. And he also meant a strong dose of reality. Because Jesus knew what was out there. He knew what the world was like, the world in which he was sending his disciples. He knew that the land was occupied territory, occupied by the foreign and despised Roman Empire, and that saying anything against the empire was dangerous. And Jesus knew that many of the religious leaders conspired with the enemy in order to protect themselves, and because some of them truly believed that it was the best way to keep the religion intact. Jesus knew what was going to happen to him if he kept on the road that he was on. And he knew it not just because he was the Son of God, and not because he could read the future, but because he could read the present. He could see what was happening and knew where it would lead. We know where it led. And if confronting the powers of the world led for Jesus to being tortured and executed, how could anyone expect that it would be any less for his followers? So Jesus names the reality for his disciples. He says, it's a dangerous, violent world out there. The sparrows fall. Those sparrows that are worth just 2 for a penny. And the poor, who could only afford the 2 sparrows, they fall. Those who confront the powers fall. The vulnerable fall. The sick, the poor, little children, the elderly. Those in this nation right now who are immigrants and foreigners, they fall. We fall. No matter who we are, no matter how we try to protect ourselves with the things of this world, Jesus would fall. And of course the disciples would fall. But God would be there every step of the way to witness it all, to give comfort and strength and power. God would be there to wail and cry and lament over the hostility and violence of the world, to bemoan the violence that snuffs out the lives of the most vulnerable, the cast-offs, the throwaway of society. God would see it all. And God does see it all. But there's nothing fatalist about that, because God does a whole lot more than see. The seeing, the watching is only the beginning. God does more than Satan in any story ever imagined. God watched and wailed and mourned when Jesus fell, when he was sacrificed, as if he were worth no more than a couple of those sparrows. God saw it all. And then God raised Jesus to new life. On the 3rd day, God raised him up and gave him new life. And in raising Jesus, God redeemed the suffering and the death. He said that suffering and violence are wrong, they are evil, but that God could bring something holy and wonderful, even out of the worst that humanity has to offer. God isn't just a distant, unconcerned observer to our world, but God works within the world, within us, to turn everything around, to bring life, even out of death. Well, you as a congregation, it seems to me, know a lot about this kind of falling and rising, of dying and rising again. You've died so many times. And not the kind of physical dying to physical violence, but you've experienced more of the daily deaths and daily resurrections that happen in our lives. You've experienced more of those than most congregations have. In fact, you in your 13 years have seen more wonderful highs of great joy and excitement and hope and energy, and more difficult lows of fear and of something maybe bordering on despair. You've seen more of that, the highest highs and the lowest lows, than some churches ever see in an entire lifetime. You have seen so much. And what I see of you is that you've been faithful through all of it. When you've been terrified, God has been with you, watching and taking part in it all. God has been witnessing your life and leading you and raising you up from every place of despair. When you've been overjoyed in hope, God has been there with you, witnessing and watching, and always rooting you in reality, in the reality that God's love is dependable, the hope that God's love is never in vain. So here's the frightening news that I have to tell you this morning. This journey of ups and downs, of fears and of hopes, is not over yet for you. There's still a lot more to come. And here's the good news I have to share with you today. This journey of fears and hopes, of ups and downs, is not over for you yet, because God is not done with you, not by a long shot. So don't be afraid. God sees it all. God knows it all. And God is working out purposes here that we can't even imagine yet. And so with just a slight change of words, I sing because I'm happy. I sing because it's true. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he's watching you. Amen. Amen.